Hey, and welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at how we can build a custom data model with mutable and immutable data to use in your apps. Cool. So let's say we have a social media app where users are able to display their information, verification status, and the number of likes that they've received. How would we actually model this in the first place? First of all, let's actually just quickly build out some UI to actually see this in action. So I'm going to build out some of the UI and then we'll break it down. So first, let's create a new view called User Info View. Okay, cool. So what we have here is I've just set the preview to just preview the view, the size that fits, and then I've just added some padding around it so you can just see it better. And then what we've done is we've just got a V stack that's going to hold all our content, and we have a H stack that's also going to help us hold our content as well. So on our outer V stack, we're just applying some padding within it, setting a frame of it to be infinity so it fills up the whole screen, and we're just giving it a background and a clipped rounded rectangle, as you can see here. But what I've actually done within the HStack child view, I've actually broken out the information into smaller compute properties because I didn't want this to get massive. So the first one we have here is the display information, which is this view here. So we just scroll down. Our display information here is the text profile, display name, and the username that we have. And then below that, we have the status count, which is this here. So this just tells you how many people you're following and how many followers you have. So you can see that it's just a H stack with a V stack in it. And then finally, we have our interactions, which is again just a V stack using an SF symbol in a button because we want to be able to actually tap this later on. And then we've got a text below, which just shows us the number of likes that someone has got. So I like to do this little placeholder thing here so I can just know what's meant to go in here when I'm just building out the UI first and then hooking it up to the model. So it just lets me give it some more context. So as you can see by me separating out these views, it just makes it a lot more clearer and cleaner when I'm looking at the view body. And if you want to actually learn more about how to build complex views like this, then check out my videos, Build Clubhouse in SwiftUI and Mastering Stacks as well in SwiftUI. Okay, so let's actually use this in our app using a list, and we'll create a base template for our list as well, and then we'll break it down. So now we have a navigation view in here. We've got our list within our navigation view. We just set the style of it to be plain so it has no styles on it. We also set a navigation type, you can see here. And then on our user view, we're adding this modifier here called button style.plain. And what this allows you to do is if you just disable this, if I actually tap on this now, you'll see that I get this highlight, which is pretty annoying, even though I don't want to see it. So what this will allow you to do is actually disable that highlight and allow you to interact with the cell normally. And we also have the list row separator hidden to hide any separators on this view as well. Now that we have our view inside of our list, we actually only have a static view here. So what I want to do is actually populate this with an actual data set that you can see on the screen. So how can we do this? Well, what about if I want to create a list of people here? Let's say if we added in this array of strings that I'm about to add in now. This would work to some kind of extent, but we've hit a problem. So the problem that we have here now is that our names is not the only information that's displayed on the screen here. So you can actually see that we've got a followers count, following, number of likes, username. So there's quite a lot of information that we need to display on the screen here. So how can we solve that problem? Well, we won't actually want to create another array for each and every single property that you see on the screen. So instead, what we can do is actually create a struct to hold and model our data. So let's create something first called an immutable struct. And what an immutable struct is an object where once the values have been set within it, they can't actually be changed again. Now, when working with modeling your data, you should actually first start off with immutable properties and then see which ones you need to make mutable. And these are values that can be changed after they've been set. So let's create our user model using a struct first of all now. So I'm just going to delete this state. And I'm just going to add in our model at the top here. So now we have our struct here, user, and this is where we're going to hold all the information that you see on the screen. There's a few things that I want to cover in this model though. So let's actually just break down what we specifically need within it. Well, the first one we need is a display name. We need the username. We also need a profile color because this could actually change per user, this background color here. We also need the followers number and the following numbers and the followers number, as well as the number of likes that someone's got. Now let's actually work through actually adding this in together and see how we can actually model our struct to have these properties. So we'll go through it one by one. So we've said here that we need a color for this. So let's add in a color. And then the next thing that we need in here is a display name. Cool. So just before I carry on, notice here how for color, I've said I want the type to be color because that's what we want to pass into this view. And for display name, we want the type for the display name to be a string because to represent someone's name, you need to use a string. So the next one we need is a username, which should also be a string. And then we want followers and following. Now we wouldn't want these to be strings, we'd actually want these to be numbers. So let's actually set them as integers. And then finally, we've also got number of likes, which again, we don't actually want this to be a string. We want this to be represented as a number. Okay, cool. So this is all good and well, but we can actually improve this. If you actually look at our app, some of our data is actually grouped together. So you can see like this is group data. All of this would be group data, and this would just be individual on its own. So let's actually look at how we can actually group this data rather than having a list of all the structs here. Because the problem with doing this now is that if we actually added a new property, this might actually get massive with all the properties we need to pass into the initializer. So let's actually make our model easier to understand and in the future more scalable by giving them some context. So in order to do this, what we want to do is actually break down our model into smaller models that we will use within our user. So let's actually just do the first one together now. So the first one we're going to tackle is our display information. So what you want to do is create an extension on user, and then within the user we're going to create a struct called display info. And then within this display information, we're only going to add in the properties that are related to the context of the user's display information. So in the future, if someone did add in a new property for the display info, we would actually add it in here. So let's copy these constants and then we'll just put it inside of here. So the next one that we have is status count, which is these two, following and followers. So let's create another extension on user. And then we'll create another struct called status count. And then we want to copy these two within here. And then the final struct that we want to create in our user is interactions. And then we'll just copy our number of likes into here. So now we've actually broken up and grouped our properties within our model to give them some more context. Let's actually use it within our user. So in our user now, we can just say display info, and then the type would be display info, and then we have status count, which would be status count, and then we have interactions, which would be interactions. So now we've given our model more information and actually grouped it based on their context. So now it makes more sense rather than just having a massive list of properties within our user struct. Cool. So now that we've done that, what we want to do now, because I'm actually working with an API, we just want to create a dummy data set that you can see on the screen. So a couple of days ago, I actually asked on Twitter if you want to be featured within my SwiftUI tutorial, and I'd add your Twitter profile into this list. So all the people you're about to see in this list are actually real people that I featured. What we're just going to do is we're just going to create one user for now, and then I'm going to copy in the rest and then we'll break it down. So just so this doesn't get too big, I'm going to do it at the bottom here. So what we want to do is actually create an extension on our user and create a static array of random data. So let's do that now. So now let's just create our first user. So we could actually create user like so if we wanted to, where we actually type out user and the initializer, but we're also able to just do a .init to just create an user as well. So we just type out .init. You'll now see that we actually get our information for us that we can actually fill in. So I'm just going to hit enter to just break this up a bit. And then within our display information, I'm just going to fill out my information here. So we can just say .init again. And then for the color, I'm going to give it the color blue. And then for the display name, I'm just going to use my display name, which is And then for the username, I'm just going to use my Twitter. Cool. So for status count, let's just put in it. And then for the followers, we want to just type in the followers, so my followers, and then following is going to be the following. And then for interactions, we're just going to give it a random number of likes. So I'm just going to say here something like 15. Cool. So now we have our first user in our model that we're going to stub as if we're interacting with an API. So what I'm going to do now is copy in the rest of the users and then just briefly break them down. So now what I've done is I've just added in a list of a bunch of users that, said they wanted to be in this video. So if you can see yourself in the list, mama, we made it. So you can see yourself here, and I've actually got a duplicate here. So let's actually delete that. Let's delete Roddy because Roddy just appears twice. So now, yeah, we've got all these people that are featured, and these are actual real people that are on Twitter, and this is their actual following count. So you can see a lot of research went into this. So now that we've done that, we actually need to use this array of data within our view. So let's just do this now. So let's go into our content view, and then we'll just add in a state property, and then we'll just create it called users, and then we'll just set this to our random data. Now we have a source of truth that our view is going to read from. So the next thing we want to do is actually link up our model to our UI. Now, before we actually add in the for each to actually loop through this, what I prefer to do personally is actually set up the model within the view in our SwiftUI preview. So let's go into our user info view. And then let's add in a new property here, a constant called user. Cool. And then within our SwiftUI preview, you should get an error, which is fine. So in here, we just want to say the first user in our random array. So I'm just going to say user dot random data dot first. Cool. And we build that, we should be all good. We force unwrap that, we should be all good. Cool. And then what we're going to do now is actually use the properties from our user within our UI here. So we'll start off with our display information first. So the way our display information works here with this profile is that we're actually just getting the first character from the person's display name. What we can say here is user.displayinfo.displayname.prefix and then 1. So what this will do is get the first character from the display name. And then in our display info, we also had the background colors that we've set as well. So let's actually just link this up. So let's just remove this hard-coded blue and we'll say user.displayinfo.color, like so. And then in our text, we'll link up the display name. And finally, in this display information, we'll just add in our username here, like so. Awesome. So now that is reading the information. Now this is actually going to fail to build, and the reason why that is because our content view is expecting a user, so it's not actually going to build. So let's just do this first and then we'll go and fix that issue. So if we just scroll down, you should see here that we have the following and follower count. So let's actually use our number in here. So we'll just do some string interpolation on the user.statusCount.following, and then I'm just going to be lazy and copy this, and then we'll change this to followers. Cool. And if you just scroll down, in our interactions, let's just change this to now to show the number of likes in the string directly here, like so. So now we've set up and linked our model to the UI within our SwiftUI view. If we actually just go back to our content view, you'll now see that it's got that error because it's saying that we will need to pass in some kind of user. So in order to fix this, we actually want to use a for each loop, and we want to pass in that user within this view here. So let's actually just type this out. So we just say for each, and then within here, we want it to be based on the user, then item user in. And then we just want to copy this and then paste it within our for each. So now this doesn't completely get rid of the error, because now we've got a completely new error and we've not actually passed it in yet. So let's first of all just pass it in. So we'll pass in our user, and now you should see that this error goes away. But now we have this error, and what this is saying is that it's actually not able to uniquely identify each user within our dummy data set. So what we could do if we wanted to is we could actually tell it specifically, we want you to uniquely identify yourself based on the user's display name, like so. And this would be valid, but me personally, I prefer to use the identifiable protocol to make it even more unique and not risk the fact of our for each getting duplicated IDs. So rather than us doing this, let's just remove this and we'll get our error again, which is fine. But this time on our user, let's add in the identifiable protocol, and then we'll give it an ID. So our for each, so we'll give it an ID so our for each can uniquely identify each user within the list. So now if you scroll down, you should see that you don't get the error anymore. Cool. And if you want to learn more about identifiable and for each, then check out my videos breaking down identifiable and for each and identifiable as well. So let's just run this and see what happens. So now you can see that we have a list of all of our users here. So you can see a list of everyone appearing within our SwiftUI preview, like so. So we've got one more person on the end there. Don't worry, I haven't forgot about you, Chris. So this is great. But one thing that you should realize is that we actually had a button here to actually increase the number of likes. So how will we actually handle this? Well, what we want to do is actually add the capability to our struct to actually add in the like functionality. So in our interactions, we need to actually add a function to increase this by 1. So let's do that now. Okay, cool. So now we've got an error. And the reason why we have this error is because remember what I said before, when we created this model, originally it was immutable, meaning that you're not able to actually change any of the values after they've been set here. So what we're actually saying here is we're actually now changing this into a mutable struct, because we actually need to change this property here. So once it's been set, we can actually change it after. So in order to fix this issue, the first we need to do is actually mark this as a variable. And now we're able to change the number of likes, but we'll get another error here, and that's because structs in general, you need to mark them as mutating if you want to change values within themselves. So let's just fix this and add in the mutating keyword like so. So let's actually just use this within our view. So if we go inside of our user info view, if you scroll down to where the button is, we should be able to call that like function now on our interactions. So we can say user.interactions.like, like so. But we now have another issue. And the reason that the problem that we have here this time is that interactions, if we just go back to it, is actually a constant. So we're actually not able to change this value right now. So in order to fix that, we need to change this to a var. But we actually have another problem here. So the other problem that we have here now is that our user that we actually pass in is not only just a constant, it's actually not able to actually read and write to update our user model. So what we actually want to use here, instead of using a var or a let, we actually want to create a binding here to that user so we can actually create and write updates to it. So let's actually update this to use the binding property wrapper. Cool. So now we added that in, you should get an error saying that this expects in binding. And in order to fix that, we just want to use the constant here. So constant, like so. So now we're just saying that we're passing a constant binding of our first user. So in our content view, we should also get another error. The other error this time is that when you're working with a for each, you're not actually able to just write to it automatically. You have to kind of create a binding. But starting with Xcode 13, you're actually able to create bindings within a for each by using the $symbol before the data source. And if you want to learn more about this, you should check it out in my video, building a dynamic bindable form in SwiftUI. So let's actually just add in the $sign here, like so. And then what we're just going to do is actually add in the $sign here, just so that we're aware that this is a binding. And then we're also going to add it in here as well, like so. So it's just clear that it's a binding. Cool. So now what's going to happen is we're actually able to read and write to our data source via a binding. So let's hit resume. And then this time, if we just tap on me, whilst we run this, if we just tap on me, you should notice that the likes is actually increasing. So now in our model, we're actually able to update the value within it and also read from it as well. And if we just do it on different people, you'll see that it works just fine. Cool. Sweet. So that's everything in this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to hear your feedback in the comment section below. Also as well, if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate if you gave this video a like, as well as subscribing to the channel and hit the notification bell to get updates whenever I release a new video. That's everything from me. I'll catch you in a bit. Deuces.